Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and longtime viewers of this channel may recognize the background going on over here because was the background way back around the inception of this channel in late 2018. That's because I'm back in the USA. Finished with that very long, often very difficult saga. I somehow managed to find a flight back to Los Angeles that was not canceled. I was fully expecting my flight to get canceled. Somehow it didn't get canceled. Somehow I made it back to the USA. And hey, maybe I've gone from the frying pan into the fire. But Philippines was a very uncertain place to be. And I am grateful to be in a familiar environment where I can recuperate and kind of just slow things down for a while and kind of unwind from having been through so much in the last few months. So that said, let's jump into today's topic, which is, quote, veridical apparitions. How they're real and how they're very, very well reported by this guy named Mark Mahan, markmahan.com, who is basically a paranormal research blogger and a guy who's does a lot of research in this area. So really cool guy, a lot of material. And of course, a hat tip to Ediponge over on the Afterlife Topics forum for linking this article a couple weeks back. Was meaning to make a video about this so that we can read this together, and I'll give my 2 cents about this as well. But before we go further, this is Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, where we talk about really the objective evidence of life beyond the grave and metaphysical implications, and also sometimes the philosophical implications. We've been doing this for a while. Lots of videos up on this channel. If you go back through the archives, every single video is its own subject, which is still an ongoing conversation, especially in the comments. So you can go back and find topics that interest you. I'll discuss it or I'll present it with a guest, and then you can get involved and put in your thoughts about these critical matters of existence and how it all works. And of course, please hit that subscribe button, as that helps keep this channel going. Or you can get involved more, donate, or become a patron. The links are down below, or go to patreon.com/afterlife topics. Or maybe schedule a consultation with me. That also works. So to continue. So this is a blog post titled Future and Cosmos, the name of the blog. Still more cases of veridical apparitions. So what does the word veridical mean? Somebody in one of the patron chats was teasing me about always saying veridical, and you hear this word come up a lot and a lot. Veridical basically means, according to the definition, connected to reality, connected to real life. And that's such an important word in this field, because veridical is literally, it means to have a connection with objective reality, which is what we're all trying to understand, because we know that there is also something known as a subjective reality, or the reality inside one's own mind. And that's not what we want to learn about. Like, we don't have an interest in learning about worlds beyond this one or afterlives or anything like this if it's just connected to someone's fantasies. That's not what we care about. So researchers basically look for connections to real events, things that are really happening, thus allowing those events to constitute as a type of evidence. In the case of apparitions, what is an apparition? An apparition is seeing a deceased person physically. Now, what is it that we're seeing? In most of the cases, it is connected again to the veridical and literal topic of an afterlife that many, many people experience some way or another. There may be some wonky parapsychological explanations saying an apparition is super psi manifesting through grief and creating a hologram. And there's a lot of weird, very, I think, intangible arguments about a lot of these subjects. If you go into like the parapsychology literature, to me, I just take things usually for what they are. So let's take a look at what this article is. Again, this is at Future and Cosmos. at futureandcosmos.blogspot.com. Okay, so he begins by referencing 8 different posts that where he references about 160 cases of veridical apparitions. Articles like 25 who were ghost told of a death, 25 more who were ghost told, 25 more accounts of veridical apparitions, even more cases when apparitions serve as announcements. And so what Mark is reporting on here are cases of crisis apparitions. A lot of these were chronicled in the Society for Psychical Research, because again, this is like the concrete afterlife evidence that those legit researchers look for. It is kind of funny, after all, these many decades, SPR still has like a neutral position on all paranormal matters. They will never say there really is an afterlife, but they do have a lot of data basically showing this is irrefutable evidence of something in that area. So the crisis apparition is when you don't know that someone has passed away, but that person comes to you, appears to you, and then you figure out that they crossed over. So for example, I'm in Los Angeles, and let's say that I have a friend in Germany. If he were to suddenly appear in my house, and I say like, "Hey, Wilhelm," and he's hanging out in the house, and I'll be like, "Wait a second, why is he here?" Because he's back in Germany. And then he'll say, "Hey Cyrus, how's it going? I gotta get out of here. Just wanted to come and say hi, bye." And then he walks away or disappears through a wall, whatever. And then you're like, well, that's really weird. Is he okay? You go on Facebook and you find out that he just crossed over in a car accident. Now, as colorful as that story sounds, that's exactly what people experience. It's yet another layer on top of many layers, demonstrating objective evidence that not only are there other dimensions, afterlives, other frequencies, other realms that we all go to, but ourselves, who we are, immediately continue upon the demise of the shutting down of the physical brain. Once again, creating the same primary point that nobody really has anything to worry about once they kick the bucket. And so yet another piece of evidence to demonstrate that. So I highly recommend heading over to the blog and checking out all of these different articles about people who are ghost told, as he recounts actually many of these tales. We'll load one of his articles up. So I really like the way he compiles this information, because he puts it down as cases, like case number 25, case number 26. And it's very easy to navigate and to read up on all of these. So in this post, he wants to discuss yet more cases of this type, and so he recounts a few stories. Let's take a look. On page 10 of volume 6 of the Journal of the Society for Psychical Research, we can read the following account of a man who saw an apparition of his brother very close to the time his brother died in an accidental cannon firing. "I was surprised to see my brother coming to meet me. He had on his velveteen shooting jacket and walked in his usual manner. It was quite light, and I distinctly saw him. I turned my eyes away for a moment to look at the gate, and then he was gone. I was much struck with the apparition, but I passed it off my mind and went to the cliff and heard some people stage singing for about half an hour, when a boy said to me, 'Have you heard of the accident to your brother at Northrepps Hall?' I replied, 'No, but if an accident has happened to my brother, I know that he is dead.' On page 13 of the same volume, we read about a sister basically learning also of her brother's death via an apparition. Miss M.W.P., who was in no anxiety about her brother, was awakened by hearing his voice call her several times. She sat up and saw him standing at the foot of her bed. The apparition said, 'I could not go without telling you goodbye,' and then disappeared. Miss P's sister testifies that the above was mentioned to her and to several schoolfellows the next day. About 6 weeks later, news arrived of the brothers' passing by drowning. On page 74 to 75 of Volume 6 of the Journal of the Society for Psychic Research, we read the following account by A. McDougall. I met no one on the road till I came to the Greystoke Pillar, about a mile from Penrith. There, driving slowly as I was about to turn into a narrow lane, I was deeply shadowed from behind, and upon looking back to see what caused the shadow, I saw my friend Broom bending over me with an expression of the most tender affection upon his countenance. I spoke to him, pulled up the horse, and alighted. I walked round the gig, called him by name, begged him not to play tricks at midnight, but to come to me and come with me. I had, of course, to go without him. At home I inquired if Mr. Broom had called. The answer was no. I then told my wife that I had seen him near the Greystoke Pillar, that he must be in the town and would be sure to call in the morning. 3 days passed when we received intelligence that Mr. Broom was demised, and strange to tell, he had died at the very hour at midnight at which I had seen him near the Greystoke Pillar. There's quite a few more here that he recounts. Again, I'm not going to read all of these off. You can check out the blog post yourself and take a look at these. And it is, of course, noteworthy that many of these accounts are, shall we say, old-timey carriages and horses, because this is when so much of this information was researched and taken seriously. And I was just thinking to myself, on the flight back to USA, I was rereading some books on PDF, like On the Edge of the Etheric, and I was thinking to myself, it's quite sad the level of optimism that these old works of afterlife knowledge had back then, because this was like the coming time of science. This is when, chemistry and, biology and, recent discoveries of things like antibiotics. I mean, this was a golden age of science, and many people were very optimistic about survival science, science of an afterlife, or where we go when we cross over. And many of them had very bold predictions back then about how in the near future these would be commonly accepted norms in our society. Little did they know, you can read old-timey works of afterlife knowledge, and the same issues and the same ideas and the same controversies are still persisting today, as if things just never progressed whatsoever. And that's why all this old work is still relevant even today, with the same issues that are, even if something was written 150 years ago, it's like it's just as relevant today, with the same people making the same arguments for and against the material. So it is quite frustrating that things never expanded. Maybe they weren't supposed to. Maybe there are powers that be that do not allow this information to expand beyond the fringe. But back then, when you read this kind of work, many people believed that it was the cutting edge and it would result in some new paradigm change. And then if only they knew that, well over a century will pass and barely will make a dent. Except to say, today in 2020, this kind of research, it still goes on, and we see, for example, a lot more attention is focused on the medical side of things and the after-death context, the near-death experiences, the sites like Endorf or Sam Parnia's research, and so the survival science and research, it's still going, but back during the heyday, they really took things seriously, like the crisis apparition, and there was a level of commitment that was involved back then, which I hope will come back in the modern age. And I think when it does, it's going to be different, because in the age of mass communication, I think this information can spread out quickly and get out of the pigeonhole that it's been stuck in for centuries of being labeled as paranormal phenomena, when it perhaps is not so much paranormal, it is merely multidimensional, something that is a part of our lives, whether we choose to deny it or not. So again, just in these articles, we have 160 cases like that, and then a bunch more cases coming from volumes of the SPR, all reported by one Mark Mahan. markmahan.com. And again, a very good blog about survival, but many other topics as well. I think this guy really needs to get some books out there and maybe expand his community a little bit. But clearly, he's a successful blogger. No comments on the post, which is surprising. So maybe head over to his page, give him some comments, and let's get the information like this out there. Yeah, so many interesting topics. This guy is like, I probably this guy's a channeler. He's just, whether people are reading the blog or not, he's just spitting out all this information. Pretty cool stuff. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll have hopefully a lot more content coming out soon now that I'm settled back in. Still dealing with those lingering long tail beer virus symptoms. I guess I can't say the name of it on the channel. Some people call it the beer virus. We know why. So I'm still dealing with the fatigue and certain other symptoms that are really, tiring and exhausting. So I'm just sticking it out here, gonna get better. But I also would like to probably do some Los Angeles meetups, at least one in the near future. I know a lot of you guys live in Los Angeles or in SoCal, so if that's the case, hit me up, let me know, and maybe we can plan some kind of event coming up soon. Maybe also one in Arizona, we'll see. But again, once I'm a little bit healthier, once things maybe settle down, once that curve finally goes back down again, and society feels a little bit more normal to do things like events or meetups. But yeah, keep that in mind for the near future if you're in this area. And again, if you want to get involved with me, do some work with me, help support this work, I'm doing consultations for people to learn about astral projection, learn about the afterlife, learn about what I know as somebody who writes about this stuff every day. I can just offer like my 2 cents, hopefully provide some direction or guidance, and those little bit of proceeds help compensate me for the time that I put into this stuff every single day, allowing me to still be able to eat food and do basic stuff. So if you want to support the work, then book me for a consultation or just jump on as a patron. That also helps. Or join the Afterlife Topics Facebook group, hang out with people, meet people, and get involved. We have almost 13,000 members there. Very, very active part of the internet. Lots of meaningful, very interesting discussions. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all on the next one.